Good evening, sorry. Good evening, everybody. My name is Vincent Vichit Vatican. I am a freelance journalist and a member of the programming committee here at the FCCT. We have a great panel tonight, subject that's of interest to a lot of people in Thailand and a lot of people involved in tourism here in Thailand. And it's this subject, if you've spent any time with hotel people, with people in tourism and hospitality, you'll know that the subject of the return of Chinese tourists is it has been since the beginning of COVID and continues to be a recurring subject. And to discuss many aspects of this issue, we have a great panel. Before I start, though, just a couple of housekeeping things. We have, I'm trying to remember, sorry, Wednesday. This Wednesday we have a great panel as well about Thai politics and what's happening with the new government. So if you're interested in that, we will have a member of Move Forward, a member of the Democrat Party confirmed. A couple of other surprise guests will be joining, and that will be moderated by Panu, the Reuters correspondent and former president of the club. So feel free to join us at 7 p.m. on the 13th. And with that, let's get right into our conversation. Could I ask my panelists to introduce themselves? Maybe that's the easiest way, rather than me botching an introduction. Vivian, would you like to say,
okay,
introduce yourself and tell me where you're from?
Sure. Good evening, friends. I'm Vivian. My Chinese name is Zhao Jingnan. I'm from China. Now I'm working for the deputy editor of Xinxian Yuebao. It's a Chinese language newspaper in Thailand. It's published over 70 years already. Also, I'm the freelance writer for the China News Service Thailand office. Mainly, I'm writing the Thai news and supply to the Chinese media. Thank you.
So we'll be asking you about how the question of Chinese tourists is being covered in the Chinese media, and if there's any difference in the way that you see the news here and the way that maybe it's being presented in China. Kunjak, could you say a word about yourself?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jack Walut. I'm the board member from the ETA. ETA is the Association Thai Travel Agent, and I'm also hold the position business development manager of the New Way Travel, which is we are the inbound tourist agency doing the market Southeast Asian market, which is which market use the Chinese speaking. We all do. Okay, thank you.
And just to be clear, ATA, the Association of Thai Travel Agents, is the inbound, it represents inbound travel agents, the travel agencies who take care of tourists who arrive here in Thailand. Gary, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Vincent. Good evening, everybody. My name is Gary Bellman. I'm director of Check-in Asia, which is an Asia-focused travel and consumer trends agency. I'm also a travel consumer analyst for Focusrite here in Asia, in China, Northeast Asia, and Southeast Asia. I'm based in Malaysia for the last 13 years. I lived in China from 2003 to 2010, and I published a book in 2014 called The New Chinese Traveler, Business Opportunities from the Chinese Travel Revolution. I grew up in travel. My mum was a travel agent, and since about 2000, I've been following very closely what's happening in China in terms of domestic, inbound, and outbound travel.
Can I also add that Gary is a co-host of the Southeast Asia Travel Show, which is an amazingly well documented podcast with speakers who cover all of Southeast Asia.
And we have some great guests as well.
And full disclosure, I've been a guest on that show as well. Since you mentioned your previous book, you also published a book this year.
Yep, actually 2 books. So we published in January. We published what was called the China Outbound Travel Handbook, 88 most important factors for recovering destinations around the world with Chinese travel coming back. We also have a new book coming out next year called The Return of Chinese Travel with Routledge, which we published, I think, in January or February.
Can you say a word about the about the book that you published at the very beginning of the year, right? Just as China was reopening to travel. Is there anything that you saw at the time, or recommendations that you made at the time, that were absolutely spot on, and things that were maybe didn't play out exactly the way that you thought?
Okay, you're giving me an opportunity here. The book itself, which is a handbook, it's online. It's a downloadable ebook. Basically, we were writing this for 3 years during the COVID pandemic. If you rewind to 2019, China was the world's largest outbound market by a long margin. And it was very, very important to all the economies of Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Asia Pacific, definitely. And if you'd have said to anybody in the travel industry at late 2019 that the world's largest outbound market will be closed for 3 years, nobody would have believed you. I don't think anybody in China would have believed you. And even now, it's quite hard to believe. But during those 3 years, what definitely happened was global travel completely changed, China completely changed, and everybody within China, so the travel industry and consumers, travelers themselves, were isolated. They were traveling only within China. So what we tried to do putting this book together was trying to work out what had happened in China over the past 3 years in terms of consumer trends, travel trends, economy, absolutely everything that comes together in this huge travel economy that we know, and then trying to predict what would happen once it reopened. I would say the one thing that we did get right, Vincent, was that we thought the reopening of China would be phased. It would be graduated across a period of months, and that's certainly what's happened. Now, back in January when we published the book, there were 2 factors that I think were most important. One is that no travel or tourism bureau around the world was quite prepared, because this turnaround happened very, very fast. You know, if you go back to November in China, nobody really expected that China would reopen in January 2023. It happened very, very fast. And then secondly, nobody knew quite what to do next. Like, how quickly will Chinese tourists come back? What are the different expectations? How have travel patterns changed? How will FIT patterns be different to group patterns going forward? And so this huge debate really has been going on for 9 months, and that's where we're at right now.
Would somebody like to give some context about what the Chinese market meant to Thai tourism before COVID?
Before COVID, right?
Yeah.
As you know, the Chinese market, Thailand always the top destination for the Chinese, and it will be in the future too. But because according to the statistic, you know, so many Chinese come to Thailand, even from there to 2018, 17, 18, 19. They all hit more than 10 million, right? And then pandemic. But I think right now, since January until now, we got 2.2 million traveler, and our government aim to hit 5 million this year. But as you heard, if we have the new policy like the visa free, I think I saw it positively. We couldn't make it, and next year also they will come a lot. This policy make good sentiment to the group, big group, I think around this. Even our, I share a little bit from our association, because we have the strategic. As you know, even from the strategic report from the Department of the Tourism, but from our association, the number inbound and to our association report from the airport also gain month by month, gain every month, like the 15 to 20%. Even, you know, right now they have the negative news from media and other some movies, anything, but the numbers still gain. But I think it's keep gaining. So,
Okay.
All
So
right.
You've touched on a lot of things that we're going to cover tonight. One being the arrivals and the capacity for tourists to come back. Gary, do you know where we are compared to 2019? I think we're still at about 50% of capacity.
In terms of outbound
From China to.
So when China reopened on January the 8th this year, international capacity from China was about 13%, 13%, which is incredibly low. I mean, you would never have expected it to be that. At that time, expectations or forecasts were that it would probably get to about 60, 65, or even 70% by the end of the summer school holidays in China, which is a very, very important travel period. That hasn't happened. It's around about 50%. But if you actually aggregate what has happened over the year, this is, I think, the most interesting statistic is, okay, we're at now about 50% of international capacity. But if you look at the lost ground over the last 8 months, only about 1/3 of the number of international flights in 2019 have actually taken place so far this year, 1/3. So 2/3 of outbound capacity from China is
yet to come.
Is yet to come. That shows, that's good and bad. You know, it shows you what the pent-up possibilities are, but it also shows the economic damage that's been lost over the last 8 months.
And as Jack said, you know, the Thai government is banking on 5 million arrivals from China this year. We're still only at 2.2 as of 1st of September, right? So we'd have to more than double the pace to get to that goal. And can I ask you, Vivian, do these stories get covered in China? From your point, for a Chinese language newspaper here in Thailand and in China?
Sure, we also focus about the news in the tourism news in Thailand, and the Chinese media also introduced some tourism policy to the Chinese tourists, as when Jack mentioned before. Now the new Thai government is trying to promote the visa fee cancelled or some new tourism policies. So the Chinese media here is covered the news about it. And about the number, we also mentioned, but as Jack mentioned about 2019, there are more than 9 million or 19 million? 10 million, or about 10 million Chinese tourists coming to Thailand. But actually, it's the maximum. It goes by many years, like 20 years, 20 years going up, and the number is the maximum. But the COVID shut down it. So now we are in the recovery period. So we should let it go slow, recover slowly, step by step also.
Just for a little bit of context, again, in 2019, for anybody who hasn't been following this, 40 million tourist arrivals, just shy of 40 million. In 2019, we were about 8 hours short of, over the course of a whole year. 40 million tourist arrivals, of which 10 million were Chinese. So that's also one of the reasons that hotels and the tourism industry in general are looking at Chinese tourists, is because it represented such a big chunk of arrivals. Right. Let's talk about some of the things, some of the obstacles. Jack talked about visa policy, that there were rumors last week that there would be visa on arrival, visa waivers, sorry, particularly for groups. That hasn't happened yet. Apparently still in the works. Not so, and there are other things as well. So what are the biggest obstacles you see? Anybody like to take that question? Maybe starting.
The obstacles for Chinese
for the return of Chinese tourists to Thailand.
I think there are many, and I think one of the things that I think we'll look back over time and ask, why did the Chinese government stage or phase this return over such a period of time? I think it was actually perfectly calibrated. China couldn't reopen all at once. The expectations would have been too high. The travel industry in China was too disrupted. The airlines weren't ready. The OTAs weren't ready. Chinese tourists themselves weren't ready to come out and travel in the numbers that were expected of them.
Can I just interrupt for just 1 second? The program did say that there would be a Chinese OTA here. I approached quite a few different people who accepted and then withdrew. There were at least 3 very big name Chinese-based OTAs who said that they would be happy to join, and then they found excuses to back out. So I don't know if I'm reading anything into that or not. And then I also approached a couple of non-Chinese based, but who work extensively with China, other OTAs, and they also declined. So sorry for the incomplete program, but we tried. Anyway, so
I think that says a lot. I think what we're actually experiencing now, 2/3 of the way through the year, moving into the last quarter, which is very, very important for tourism in this region. The October Golden Week is coming up, and then we have the end of year period, Christmas and New Year, very, very important travel period. But this has been a year of learnings. I don't think anybody in the travel industry kind of expected that this would be the position we'd be in October, that we would still be expecting more from China. I think everybody expected press and play. This will go back to quite similar to 2019. But I think the reason that it hasn't just shows you just how difficult it's been for the Chinese travel industry to scale back up and to not just to recover, but to actually recalibrate demand and supply. We've seen across our region over the last 1.5 years since Southeast Asia reopened, it's been difficult to recalibrate. I would say now, you fly into most airports in the region, KLIA, Suvarnabhumi, they're busy again. Vietnam, busy again. Bali, busy again, but it took time. Changi, busy again, but it took time. I think there was expectations of China that it would happen quickly, and now we're seeing that just wasn't possible.
Do you see other obstacles? Maybe Vivian, I mean, people talk about everything from the economic situation in China. Maybe there's less disposable income for people to travel. And then there's a lot of social media right now about, very negative images about Thailand. I don't know, does anybody want to take that, Vivian or anybody else?
So I think the return of the Chinese really slowly, not only the factor that about the negative media or the movie, right? But
does everybody know what we're talking about? Or there is an incredibly popular. Or Vivian, do you want to explain?
I think it's not only in Thailand, also happened in Malaysia. Have you read the news about yesterday? Malaysia couple takes the taxi in Bangkok, and when the driver is stepping, speak Thai, they don't understand. They jumping up from the Thai taxi because they worry about they are kidnapping to the Myanmar or something like that.
So there's a very popular, the leading box office movie in the last few weeks has been about human trafficking and Chinese tourists being kidnapped and shipped off to Myanmar, I think is in the movie. So there's been a lot of discussion about whether Thailand is safe in the Chinese media, and particularly on social media. That's the context of that particular.
Okay.
Story.
So a part of this issue, I think is the other factors is all related, because after the pandemic, the macroeconomic, the financial crisis, like the real estate bubble, and Chinese government new policy to want to the consumer to be the internal the circulation. So they want the people to traveling outbound less than the before. So I think it's a few factor that impact the tourism, our tourism. So yes.
Do you, Gary, go ahead.
May I say that?
Oh.
I read a lot of news about the discussion about the Chinese economic down, its influence in the Chinese tourism coming about. But from my point of view, it's not true, because for example, in Thailand, there are more Indian travelers coming to Thailand, and comparing the economic situation, I cannot say the Chinese tourism is poorer than them, or they have the limited budget for the traveling abroad. So actually, the key point should be the tourism. From my point of view, the key point is Gary mentioned, the Chinese tourism industry and the Thai industry didn't recover yet, because the Chinese tourism, they are highly dependent about their guide. They have a big English language gap. They feel unsafe, especially in this situation, traveling abroad. So if the tourism industry isn't covering, they don't have the enough airplane or hotel or guide to secure that, so they don't choose to traveling abroad like that. Okay. But I totally disagree about the economic down situation.
That there are definitely enough people who have enough money to travel.
Can I make a point?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
I totally agree with Vivian. I think one of the things we have to all understand and remember, the Chinese economy is just massive and complex and hugely, it's been destabilized, and probably there are some structural issues from COVID. But that goes around the world. I mean, if you go back to 2 years, you look at the US economy, you look at the European economy, everybody was fretting, will travel come back? Because we were facing war, we were facing gas shortages, energy shortages around the world. But you look at some of the airlines and the profits they've been making around the world in the last 2 years, they're astonishing. So there has been this incredible decoupling, actually, of economic reality and people's desire to travel. And I don't believe China's any different to that.
Yeah.
Jack, could you answer some of the things that Vivian mentioned? Some of the obstacles, simple things like language barrier, and being maybe less comfortable in a foreign country. Do you see that those kinds of needs or that kind of behavior, that kind of demand from Chinese tourists has changed from before COVID to now? And how is your industry addressing that?
Okay, so I was just mentioned about the economic, right? But I'm not finished yet, because we do have the group, we have the client, so we can see the behavior. Thailand also like the favorite destination, they will repeat to come again. Like as you know, this year, I think it's June, we have the 16th Chinese Entrepreneur World Congress, something like that, and which is did happen in Thailand with the Queen's Ligit. So we have the 3,000, 4,000 Chinese entrepreneurs come to Thailand, and that's new. Also make a good news to Thailand, and they will keep coming. So,
do you think there's something that the tourism industry and the travel agents in particular should be doing? Is there something different or something more that they should be doing right now, or are they? Is your business and is your industry answering the demands of Chinese travelers right now? Do you think? I mean, Yeah, I mean, it could be in terms of promoting.
Of course, I think it's have to rely on the new Thai government too, to do the promote or campaigns, to make the statement, to ask you. The topic is sometimes they only about traveling to Thailand and safety issue, something like that.
So you have to communicate more about.
Yes,
about that.
yes, of course.
Gary, you wanted to.
I think, yeah, I think Jack's right. I mean, communication is really, really important. I think Vivian made a really good point when we were talking about this issue of fear of safety and scams in Southeast Asia. That really shows you the importance of social media in China. I know that we know that social media is so important in travel around the world, but the Chinese social media ecosystem is very different, very, very different to anything around the world. It lives behind a firewall, and it has its own mechanisms, its own dynamics. And trying to understand that, I think, is what a lot of, I would say, tourism boards around the world didn't do during the pandemic. They didn't work out how Xiaohongshu, for example, has become so important, when maybe 3 years ago it wasn't. So I think understanding the technicalities of the Chinese communication media, they've changed. And we have to learn and live with that. And that will be very important, particularly with younger travelers.
Vivian, can you say something about the difference between the news, the way that you report news, and particularly tourism news, and then exactly what Gary is saying, that the social media in China or the other sources of information in China?
Yeah, I agree with Gary, but the social media is quite different from our traditional media. Normally the traditional media, we got the sponsors or we got the advertisements, but the social media, they would catch their focus by the amazing news. So they always would like to get something different or amazing things to scare people. Even the scare people is one of their tricky, I have to say tricky. So we should find some communication way to promote the Thailand is a safety place, something like that, using their tricky also.
But I mean, you could probably say that about social media anywhere in Thailand. I mean, in Thailand as well. What about, how would you compare the news that you write and report on and the news agencies or the big newspapers? Would you say that they cover, do you have a different perspective, or is the news pretty much the same?
Yeah, sure. As a newspaper or the traditional media, we have an editor. We should finding out is the news really happened. At least we will check the fact point.
So the fake news is a big problem.
But the social media didn't. They just want to catch your eyeball, so they don't care is the true news or fake news. So there's a big difference. I don't think. I think it's not big difference between China or any other country, such as Malaysia. They also scared.
Okay. what's next? If you all three of you look into your crystal ball and see what's the rest of the year going to look like, and what do you see coming for Thailand, for Chinese tourists in Thailand in the next 3 months, or the next 3 months to the end of the year, and then next year.
Okay.
They're different.
The crystal ball I break down. Growth, definitely. I mean, you will see more Chinese tourists coming. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Thailand is a desirable destination for Chinese tourists. It's a desirable destination for tourists across Asia. It's by far and away the most visited country in Southeast Asia by a huge margin. And Chinese like to be a part of that. There's a lot of social and cultural and culinary attractions to this country, historical attractions. It's tapping those out now, and it's finding out what are those new touch points for Chinese travelers. What we will see, and Jack,
if I can just again to give some context, I mean, you were talking about it's a huge, by far, I think we were already at 15 million,
17,
or 17 already.
That's more than double any other country.
Exactly. I mean, and the next country was Singapore at 7 or 8 million, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's far ahead. Yeah. But I think what now is. Okay, so we've got Golden Week coming up in October, we've got the end of the year. You will see growth. But now it's really, the interesting thing will be to see how this, if it happens, this visa waiver policy, how that attracts group tourists. Because the interesting thing about group tourists is not just the group tourists come, and they come in bigger numbers, they actually impact how Chinese airlines start planning for the future. And we haven't seen that so far this year. So the group tourism airline coefficient is very, very strong, and that's one of the things all destinations in Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific are looking forward to into 2024. So two things. One, growth will definitely happen here in Thailand, but competition around the region is getting stronger as well. So this is going to be, I guess, the factor that everybody has to take into account.
Jack, do you see groups coming back? Because a lot of the conversation about Chinese tourists before COVID was that groups, that return tourists were individual tourists, where FITs coming back to were not coming back with groups. The first trip was almost always in some sort of group context, and after that changed. Do you see that kind of demand changing, or do you see groups coming back stronger?
Okay. Firstly, I agree with Gary or what he was saying. But definitely they have the group tourists or some behavior that got changed. I think before COVID, we did a lot of price war. You do the cheapest, you got the group. Sometimes you don't have even the profit, but you got the huge volume every agent. But I think after COVID, even the consumer, even the traveler, they more concerned about the quality of the product. Yeah.
And has that changed? I mean, has that demand for quality changed? I mean, how has that changed compared to 4 years ago? Can you give an example? Or?
Okay.
Do you want me to jump in?
Sure.
I think what's happened over the last 3 years is the quality of tourism experiences in China has really elevated, and that's changed expectations. So now if you travel in China on a high-speed railway, or you go to, the hotel quality in China is amazing. The airlines, their new fleets are much better than they ever were before. Service quality is much better. QR code payments. Let's remember, China brought QR code payments into Southeast Asia. The new digital economy in China is way advanced of anything we know in this region. So expectations are just much higher. And I think Jack is absolutely right. That will play through across the board. So this isn't just for younger travelers. This is right up to older travelers, business travelers, the whole gamut. Expectations are much higher.
I was thinking about a show you did a few months ago about digital payments. Would anybody Vivian, would you like to say something about the ease of digital, or how complicated it is for somebody from China to pay for something?
I have to disagree of both of them again. They are talking about the high quality of the Chinese tourist. Actually, I just discussed with my friend. She working for the TAT. The Chinese tourists, they don't they actually, maybe some part of the Chinese tourism, they care about the quality. Actually, they prefer about the low price, but much better than the quality. It's talking about the changing of the structure of the Thai tourism. Now the Thai government would like to promote high quality tourism industry, such as low carbon tourism, or the sustainable tourism, community tourism. But from my experience, only on this summer, August, 2 of my family members coming to Thailand. They are still keeping the old idea about the Thai traveling. They still want to go to Pattaya, Walking Street, Tiffany Show, Grand Palace. No big difference before the COVID-19 and now. But for the industry people, they're still thinking maybe the Chinese tourists, they were looking for the difference, high quality, high service. Even they would like to pay more. But I must mention about the population in China. Most of them never left their hometown, even not mention about go abroad. Thailand sometimes should be the first place they're traveling abroad. So they still they still want to go to the destination to see the lady boy, something amazing. And also Jack mentioned about the Zero Fare tour group.
Yes.
They still prefer it. I watched a TikTok video in China. 2 young people, they joined the Zero Fare tour group in China. They still need to shopping a lot, but the traveling fee is really, really cheaper than comparing with them. They are still thinking, okay, I'm going to traveling, we still need to buy some souvenirs, local food, like that, whatever. So shopping is comparing with the high tourism cost, tour group cost, they still prefer shopping. So that's the big difference from my point of view. Normal Chinese people thinking we as the industry experts.
I'll just qualify what I said. I think the one thing about the Chinese tourism market is huge and it's so diverse. You have the tourists that you're talking about there, but you also have a very, very high-end market. You have business travel. You have absolutely everything. You've got everything from basically business market, from backpackers to people who can afford to go into space. I mean, this is a huge country. It's a huge market. And actually, there is no single Chinese traveler. There's no such thing, just as there's no such American traveler.
Are there any statistics available on, I mean, the touchstone was, for a lot of people during COVID, was after COVID we want quality tourists, we want high spending tourists, we want. Do we have any way of measuring who's spending what, or how much is being spent? I mean, it's a question. I have no. I haven't seen any sort of statistics like that. Like what share of the tourism market can be attributed to mass tourism and groups, and how much is 5-star hotels and Michelin-star restaurants?
Incredibly difficult to do. If you ask tourism authorities of Thailand, everything gets aggregated because it's the only real way to manage big markets is to aggregate and macro the data. But in terms of the return, about group tours or in FITs or high-end travelers, I mean, you have to just dig much deeper. You have to go and talk to the hoteliers. You have to talk to the airlines. One thing I would say, I think Vivian is absolutely right. In the first 6 months of this year, value and quality, value and cost consciousness has been very, very high. But it was in most outbound markets in the first 6 months that they reopened. I don't think that's exclusive to China.
Was that true? I mean,
in Southeast Asia it was, for sure.
There wasn't this sort of pent-up revenge travel where
if
people were willing to spend.
Well, you have to remember the way that we've reopened. Singaporeans have more disposable income, but if you're traveling from Malaysia or Laos or Cambodia and your currencies are much weaker than they were 3 years ago, you are very cost conscious.
Okay. Would anybody like to add anything else? Are there any big subjects that we've missed out on? We've covered airline capacity, we've covered the economy, we've talked about social media scares, we've talked about other, the expectations of Chinese travelers. I mean, I guess that is a question. Have those expectations? I mean, we've sort of touched on it before, but have those expectations changed considerably, or are they very much, there's a segment of the market that will always be very cost conscious, and there is a segment of the market that will spend whatever they want to spend because they can. But do you see any differences or any trends or any tendencies in the last 8 months since Chinese travelers started reopening? Does it follow the patterns that it followed 4 years ago, or not? Anybody?
No.
Or is it impossible to say?
It doesn't follow any patterns yet because the market hasn't been fully open. I mean, it's only really since August been fully open and this stage reopening. And you won't really see full patterns of travel and really understand the travel market until 2024. There's just not enough data.
Not enough.
There's not been enough travel.
Enough movement.
There's not been enough movement. And what we've seen so far has been a graduated recovery, and that will continue. The curve will continue upwards. But in terms of actually making definitive statements about where this is going in future, it's still too early.
Are there any other issues for Chinese tourism that we haven't addressed yet? Are there other elephants in the room? Are there other issues that maybe are under the radar that need to be addressed?
Well, I think one of those probably that we've learned from the beginning of this, and we don't know if this is a transient trend or not, but certainly for destinations like Thailand, Malaysia, Australia, the key markets, Japan, South Korea, they are now not just competing with each other, they're now competing with China, because domestic travel in China this year has been incredible. It's 106% compared to what it was in 2019. Now that may be a transient post-recovery phase, but it may not be. But we have no real way of knowing.
Well, plus it's a huge market anyway. I mean,
but the actual, I mean, if you look at like the big airlines, China Eastern, Air China, China Southern, they've kept a lot of capacity in China so far this year. They haven't actually taken it internationally. Now, there may be some reasons for that. There may be government related, but also because the demand is there on domestic travel. But again, is that pent-up demand revenge travel within China? Will that dissipate? Will that taper off next year and more people will travel? We don't know.
And just something anecdotal, one of my last trips before COVID was to Chongqing in China. And one of the figures I remember from that trip was that they had 250 million tourist arrivals in the city and in the province of Chongqing. 4 million of those were international, so it was almost all domestic anyway. And if those figures are now 160% of what they were pre-COVID, why travel out? Right? What's the,
I think it's something we'll learn, and this is the unfolding drama of the return of Chinese travel. It's fascinating to the region because it's so economically important to the region, but actually how that's going to play out, I'm not sure what you think, Vivian, but I think it's still quite uncertain.
Actually, I have a question why you guys or Thai government is really worried about the Chinese tourism recovery. Is it really a big issue for you?
Because it was 25% of arrivals in 2019. So 25% of the market is a big chunk of the market.
Yeah, but you know, as mentioned, China just opened for about 8 months. Maybe some in the COVID fanatics, some Chinese people, they need to review the review the passport or something, and also the Chinese traveling agencies, they need to recovering. So it should be taken slowly. In Thailand, we say it 在yin yin, but why everybody here is rushing about that? They really worry about the recovery. I think this covering slowly, but they need this.
No, I agree with you. I absolutely agree. I think that the reason the worry is just the economic importance, just the volume. It's not just about the number of visitors. It's the airline slots. It's the hotel bookings. It's the hotel investors. It's the government travel. It's the business travel. There's so much more to this. And that's why destinations are really, really concerned, and they're competing really, really hard. I agree that the recovery will happen. At what stage that happens, we're still uncertain.
How fast and at what rate?
How fast that happens. But I can understand why everybody wants their piece of the pie, because it was the biggest pie.
Right. Would anybody, there's a mic at the back of the room if anybody has any questions. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm a former board member now in hospitality. Basically, you talk a lot about Thailand, which of course we hear for and appreciate. But what about the big picture trend and tendency of Chinese comeback in the region of Southeast Asia or even Asia in general? All the discussions that you made, does it also reflect the same thing for the rest of, the region as well? And as Vincent asked, do you see any changes in shift in the market? Like, you mentioned how, okay, they're still gonna keep coming back to key destinations like Thailand or all that, but are they traveling more to somewhere with less visa hurdles, perhaps, like Europe, for example? And another question I have is, forgive me if I haven't really grasped the whole discussion and the answer to what do you think is the biggest challenge right now? Because you're talking about, it's recovering, and we just have to wait. But what are the biggest issues out there? Is it the airline capacity, the visa all the travel restrictions? Since it's clearly made by you guys that it's not really about economic situation, so what is actually the biggest issue? Thank you.
Okay, so the first question about is this debate being replicated across the region? Yeah, absolutely. But the debate is stronger here in Thailand simply because of the volume and the number of Chinese travelers that came here in 2019, which was, I think, 11 million out of 40 million visitors. 27.5% of your inbound market was from China. 27.5%, that's a huge number. Now, the average across ASEAN was 22.5%. So you can understand why Thailand, I think it was the third highest. Cambodia and Laos had higher percentages. But if you look at Singapore or Malaysia, those countries, Bali, Indonesia, their actual percentage of Chinese travelers was less. So the debate is very, very strong here simply because of that economic importance. Going forward, in terms of, you asked about the, what are the biggest hurdles, what are the challenges going forward? And they are numerous. And so when we look at it within a specific country context, we do look at some of the issues we've talked about today. You know, what are the specific issues in Thailand that are behind the fact that there's only 2.2 million Chinese travelers this year compared to 11 million in 2019. So that's the local debate. In terms of the global debate, there are so many more issues. You know, the weakness of the yuan, the economic situation in China, the look for cost and value. Visa issues, definitely. I mean, certainly when China reopened, a lot of visa, you look at some of the key markets, Japan, Korea, Australia, US, they immediately put restrictions on travel from China. And that's taken 8 months to overcome. There are a lot of diplomatic issues to get to that point. There's issues of geopolitics. One of the big issues for European destinations, for example, is that European airlines are not allowed to fly across Russia and probably won't ever be in any time soon. Chinese airlines are allowed to do that. Now, that's become a big issue with US airlines and with European airlines because they say that's an unfair advantage. So over the last 6 or 7 months, the US, particularly with China, has been negotiating on the basis that when Chinese airlines get more access to the US market, the US airlines won't get the same access to the China market because they have to fly a more circuitous route. So that's one of the issues going forward. There are multiples. We really don't know, honestly, how this Chinese economic destabilization is going to impact in future. We don't. You look at the streets of China, you look at the malls in China, you look at lifestyle in China, it looks to be back to normal. But there is a reason that more Chinese people are traveling in China this year than they ever have done before. Now that could be safety, that could be COVID related, that could be economic related. We'll have to wait and see for these to play out. So I just think that we're in a post-COVID context, and I think we have to really take a step back. None of us expected what happened during COVID. None of us expected that airlines would stop flying. None of us that people would stop traveling. And rebooting that has been difficult around the world. China is the world's largest outbound market. It's the world's second largest airline market. Bringing that all back to where it was before will take a lot of time.
So a part of the economic and geopolitical issue, for my point of view, is a visa issue, and also like Gary say, is China not fully recovery around the airline and the people to like the manpower, everything. Okay, I give you the example. If you travel like the FIT, right? You do the visa on arrival, it's easy, the few people. But if you do the corporate group like the 200 people up to, it's really difficult when you apply to the visa to the embassy, everything. So it's also the one of the things that they concern and consideration to change the destination. Thank you.
When we are talking about the changing, I think we should separate of the long term and the short term situation. As Gary and Jack mentioned about the long term, there are a lot of effects. It's complicated, like economic, flight capability, industry recovery, international politics. But for, as a journalist, as a normal tourist, I think for the short term, if we would like to promote the Chinese tourism marketing, Thailand faces the 3 key points. First of all, is a visa. It's very difficult to apply tourism visa before today, I think. On March, when the China just opened, my parents would like to come to Thailand to visit me because we didn't see each other during the COVID for 4 years, almost 4 years. Even I'm in Bangkok, knows a lot of friends here, even the government officer. I upload every document including the bank account, everything to the embassy in Thailand in China, but they didn't get the tourism visa. They only can get the visa arrived, and it's true. During that time is 1 month, but now it's 15 days. And as Jack mentioned, if they would like to recover the tourism industry in China, there's thousands of people need a visa, you know. If they cannot get the visa from the travel agency easily, quickly, and cheap, it's very difficult to mention about the population come back 2000, like 2019, because 9 million, how can you do that? Right, the visa is the most important, and the safety. To be honest, the safety is every normal Chinese people worry about it. My cousin just come in August. He mentioned about if you are not in Bangkok, I'm afraid coming to Thailand because there are a lot of news about the phone scamming, trafficking, and stiff violence or something in the social media of the China. So mentioned about the safety, promoting how safety place of the Thailand is very important to change this situation shortly. And another thing is Jack should be do more hotels, more airlines, and more traveling attractions. Actually, before the COVID, I know no less than 5 places they got the Tiffany show. But now, if you would like to watch it, Pattaya only. Maybe, I don't know, Phuket is open or something. So they should to let the Thai tourism industry recovery quickly also.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. I think that the visa issue, it creates quite a dangerous cycle, because if you look at Europe, Thailand is a good example, but Europe even more so. As soon as China reopened, the visa requirements, the Schengen visa requirements, country by country in Europe, a lot of those were taken up by business travelers from China. They applied quickly. So group travelers and FITs couldn't get a visa. And so what that did for 6 months was basically the airlines stopped actually adding more capacity into Europe, because there's no point, travelers can't go there. So you've got this cycle, you know, European countries are saying we want more Chinese travelers, but they don't have the capacity at their visa issuing offices to actually ramp up and allow more visas so that Chinese can travel, which means the airlines don't put more capacity back, which means you've got this cycle that's going nowhere. And that's been, you know, a bit of a case for Europe this year. And I think, you know, Thailand now looking at a visa waiver is a really, really good way to unlock this bottleneck.
Excellent. You had a question.
Hi, my name's Danny. I'm a student and intern in Bangkok. I'm interested in the domestic market for tourism in China, and I was just wondering, was it 106 or 160% increase in the domestic market? I didn't quite catch that.
106.
106. Okay. Well, I was wondering if you think during the years of COVID, if Chinese people rediscovered domestic tourism and all the amazing places you can travel to in China, and if maybe that is enduring today, and more people are choosing to travel domestically rather than internationally, just for the love of their own country.
Sorry, I didn't get it. Sorry. Apologize for my poor English. Could you pardon your question?
Yes. So my question is, are more Chinese people just looking to travel in China because there's so many they were reminded of the great places to travel to when they couldn't travel abroad during the pandemic?
Oh, sure. They designed to traveling abroad. Yes. After I think January, the Chinese government reopening the reopening the international gate. We have the name list, the Thailand and the other country. I don't remember it's the first step, and now they open the Korean, Japan, or another one. They really happy about it. They are crazy to getting abroad, but we still meet the population. The flight is not enough. Before, from Bangkok to Kunming, my hometown, there are 4 flights each day, every day. And the air tickets is very cheap, about 2,000 baht something, but now the price is still high and maybe just 2 flights. So a lot of Gary's problem, industry problem, but I'm sure they really, really want to get out. They are boiling from the Chinese tourism already.
I think it's absolutely true. I think but there's the demand and supply side that happened in the last 3 years. So the demand was there because people couldn't travel outside, and so there was this desire to travel more around China. But the Chinese travel industry worked out much better how to market itself to Chinese travelers, which it didn't really do particularly well before. So you've seen this year, you've seen a lot of the outcome of that. You know, it's much easier to travel by high-speed railway to so many destinations now. You don't have to take a flight. And that's been marketed much better. So you have like certain things that didn't happen before. For example, you have themed train trips on the high-speed railway, which you didn't have before. Panda trains in Chengdu, this kind of thing. And it's become just a much better and a more advanced domestic travel market. And that will endure into the future. But as Vivian says, you know, people also want to take their trips overseas. So let's see how that plays out.
I see one. Hello. What I see is since the open the country, right, until just now, sometimes it's a vice versa. You apply the Chinese visa is difficult too, and as Vivian say, the air ticket really expensive. So mostly the Thai tourist group to go travel to the China is difficult a bit. Even the study abroad, like the Thai students study in China, they just got back into the country just now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, may I? And mention about the domestic tourism market in China, I have to say sorry for the foreigners because we have a high population. We, you know, even supply for the Chinese people, our traveling, traveling place is not enough. For example, the Great Wall is very huge, but during the summer vacation or the long holiday, it's still full of the people. So normally we didn't do the better job than TAT. Cannot promote a lot of the international tourism for the foreigners. Sorry for that, because it's full already, you know. Sorry for that.
No, but that's exactly what I was going to say as well. My meeting just before I came to the club tonight was with a hotel group that has opened a number of hotels in China, and they would like to promote the hotels to an international market. They have no particular need to, because there's so much demand domestically, and so so this media trip to go see these hotels in Yunnan is going to be really, really tiny, because it's not where their money is best spent to promote their hotels.
Actually, they would like to promote, but considering the quality, they didn't promote hardly comparing with the Thai.
Well, I don't know. I mean, because of the quality. I mean, again, like I said, my last trip to China before COVID was in Chongqing. They're amazing. You know, the quality of the products of the hotels, the tours, the spas. Chongqing is a mountain spring area, so they're absolutely amazing, and a lot of international brands. There were Banyan Tree has a resort. There's a W in the middle of town. There's certainly Nicolo from Hong Kong. They're these, and they're top of the line, 5-star hotels. And the same thing for this tour in Yunnan that I was talking about. The hotel looks the hotels look amazing. So there definitely is improved quality. So all of that to say that, what are the other things keeping people in China for domestic tourism? There is a change in the quality of products available, whether they're themed trains or high-speed trains. The domestic air network didn't stop in the way that international travel did. So you can build it back faster because more of it was still there. There are lots of reasons.
Yeah, I think the one thing that probably might drive Chinese out of China is rates. Rates have gone up so high, particularly during popular periods of travel. If you go to Hainan Island or somewhere like that now, it's really, really expensive. So it's actually cheaper to come to Thailand or to Bali. You get better value.
Yeah.
Well, but this goes back to what Vivian was saying about good value in Thailand, and for at least a segment of the travelers being very, very value driven. Right. With that, please, you have a question.
Thank you for all of you to bring this topic. And I'm a freelancer writer in Thailand for English and Chinese media. And I have a question that actually I noticed there's like different trends since or after COVID, and it's it's maybe more possible that to target those kind of passengers or tourists instead of you try to bring someone who has no ideas, could be deeply affected by social media. For example, one trend is digital nomads. That's like a long-term long-term traveling, if we can consider as that. It's very noticeable that since COVID, there are more like digital nomads community from China to stay in Thailand now. And there's another trend is like transit tourists. Because I checked the ticket, for example, between China and the United States is incredibly high. During the late September, the price is about cheapest price is about 17,000 RMB. But if you choose to transit in Bangkok from Beijing to New York, the price could be like 12,000. So it's significantly cheaper if you just have a layover here and stay a couple of days. If your trip plan is not that tight and have more time, you can like stay here a little longer for traveling. Yeah, I think that's another idea that might bring more tourists, I think.
Okay, thank you. So two questions. So 2 points. One about digital nomads and encouraging digital nomads to come and stay. About the connectivity and the transfers. One of the reasons, and the example of North America of traveling to New York. One of the reasons that Bangkok is a cheaper place to connect is that there are no direct flights to North America. So you're transiting through Bangkok, but you're almost necessarily going to have to go. You have to stop somewhere else. You have to stop in the UAE. You have to stop in Singapore. You have to stop in Hong Kong or Taipei or Japan or Seoul to get a flight, because there are no flights to anywhere in the U.S. right now. So that the value of that is offset by the travel time that you would need to invest. Digital nomads, however, are a huge hot topic. Anybody have anything to say about?
Okay, it's I've spoken to people around the world in the last 2.5 years about digital nomads. Nobody understands the market. Absolutely nobody. There's no tourism board, there's no hotel, there's no airline, there's nobody that understands where this market is going to go in future and what actual value it brings to the tourism industry. Very independent in the way that they travel, tend to travel on a whim, move between destinations quite quickly. A very good example, I think anybody who's read articles recently is in Colombia, the city of Cali, which became a real destination for digital nomads about 6 or 8 months ago. Pushed up prices of rents, pushed up prices of coffee bars, that kind of thing, and then everybody moved on and went to Medellin. And it leaves behind a wake of disappointment. What happens with the digital market in the digital nomad future? I mean, I'm not qualified to say because I don't think anybody knows. Is it a transient phase? Is it actually going to become something more solid? I mean, I live in Malaysia. Malaysia has tried to institutionalize this, create a digital nomad visa where people can come and stay. They've designated certain places, certain hotels that get certain rates for digital nomads. But the whole point about digital nomadism is it doesn't want to be institutionalized. It certainly doesn't want to have a visa. It certainly wants to go anywhere near having to pay tax, that kind of thing. I think for the travel industry, it's a huge headache. And the other one thing I would say at the moment, this global antipathy towards Airbnb and home rentals will really possibly hurt the digital nomad market.
Honestly, I don't have any idea of those market, but as I know, the Thailand also top of the destination of the digital nomad, even like the northern, southern, and I seen some model like the digital nomad. They not come like they book only online, right? But they have some model like the agent lease the property and do like all the co-working space as the accommodation in the same place for those market. So, that only I know.
Okay. I was just going to say one other thing. I mean, maybe a little snide comment about connectivity and airlines again. To be an effective place to transit, you need a national carrier that's based in a hub that has that as part of its strategy to connect people from flying from China to Bangkok to Zurich or Copenhagen or Frankfurt. And our national carrier is maybe not the most cost effective and most strategic in that field.
And I think it's looking at other options. I don't think it's looking at connectivity to the US.
No.
It's looking at connectivity through Turkey, into
Well,
the Middle East, into Africa.
Yeah. So I mean, so the new Thai flight to Istanbul, for example, from China to Bangkok to Istanbul, maybe, but then you were talking about the value of of it being 5,000 RMB less. I'm not entirely convinced that Thai is going to provide that. It'd be interesting to see. Right. Yes, please.
Hi, sorry, just a quick question. So I'm Laura from the British Embassy. It's just a question on diversification, really. So I think now that we've got a new government in place, we've seen already that a big part of their policy is a push on the economic agenda. And I think eventually, I'd be interested in your perceptions as to whether if Chinese tourism doesn't return to what it was pre-COVID, do you think Thailand will eventually seek to diversify? I think one thing that we've been looking at is, the effects of the economic slowdown as well in China, and whether that will have an impact on tourism in the long term. So yeah, just interested in your views on that.
Could I jump in for a second just to say that in 2019, spending wasn't quite the same, but the number of tourist arrivals from China and the number of tourist arrivals from the rest of ASEAN were almost equivalent, within a million of each other. So there already is, there is diversification. Something else that happened during COVID is that Thais, like we were talking about Chinese in China, rediscovered a domestic market, and you find Thai people going to Phuket a lot more than they used to, and to other places a lot more than they used to, because they didn't see the value of going to a domestic destination when they could go to Hong Kong or Singapore or somewhere Tokyo or Seoul. And all of a sudden people during COVID discovered that there are these amazing products. There are these luxury villas, and they're with butler service and private pools, and so for that end of the market you could certainly do that. But then they also discovered that there was a good value in going to places like Phuket, and they didn't need to go so far. How much of that market will continue after international travel reopens entirely, remains to be seen. But and certainly it dropped off after when international travel opened. But there is domestic demand as well. So regional, domestic are both places that Thai tourism has diversified. Anybody else like to add to that?
I would say I think it's a really good question, because I think diversification is probably the hottest topic in inbound tourism across this region at the moment. Australia is launching its own diversification strategy right now. In this region, we do talk a lot about China, obviously, because of its economic importance and the volume. The two hottest markets this year in Thailand probably are India and Russia, and will be going forward. You look at India for many reasons. It's often compared to China as an outbound market. It's a long way behind in terms of volume. But the interesting thing going forward is the reorganization of Air India, the number of airplanes that it's buying, and what it wants to do in future. Also, the popularity of Thailand amongst young, affluent Indians, I think, is really, really rising. Russia, I think, is an interesting market for so many reasons. We know what's happened. You go to most European destinations, you don't really see any Russian tourists, but the Russian winter this year lasted much longer. And I live in KL, and I saw a lot of Russians into May, June, even in July, transiting through KL from Thailand, from Phuket, to go to Bali. So that whole the whole Russian market is changing. Thailand is looking at Central Asia, and I think that's quite an important market. The outbound air market from Central Asia is going to grow quite a lot. Middle East as well. There are a lot of markets, but diversification doesn't happen overnight. We just discussed 27.5% of Thailand's inbound market in 2019 came from China. You can't replace that overnight, and we've seen that this year. It's almost impossible to do. But you can actually start to mitigate its importance over time, and India and Russia will certainly be the two key markets to do that.
And also, it's just worth pointing out that China and India are both markets of 1.5 billion people. So if you were talking about high spending, more affluent travelers, the 1% or the 0.1% will support a lot of that.
Yeah, somebody asked a question earlier about the China debate. Is that happening around the region? Yes. Is the India debate happening around the region? Yes. Because, as you say, just huge potential.
And from one of your shows, China is in every country's top five, right, in the region, just about.
I think pre-pandemic, of the 10 countries, it was number 1 in 5 or 6 markets, number 2 in the others, and then number 1 in Malaysia is 3rd. But yeah, it's
so top of every market. Yeah. Throughout the region. And
in some of those countries by a huge margin. Thailand, it was number 1, but it wasn't number 1. It was number 1 by a huge margin.
Great. Any other questions from the floor? If not, I will ask you on the panel if there's anything else you'd like to add, and if not, I will let you go. And
no, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Thanks for the questions. Thanks, Vincent. Thanks to the panel as well. I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, thank you, all of you. Thank you, all of you on the panel for spending the time. Thank you, everybody in the room, for coming to hear us and ask your questions. And as I said, just one quick thing: the big event this week is the Thai Politics panel, 7 p.m. on the 13th. So please come for that. Also know that the club does lots of different things. We had a hugely successful wine and cheese night on Friday, and lots of other fun live music thing, the art you see on the wall. So yeah, do consider, if you like this sort of event, to do consider joining the club. There are membership forms at reception. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Could I ask you a favor? Could you take a picture of us?
Not too deep. Not too deep. Not too deep. You mean the